Hey, welcome to another episode of I Can Alteryx That with coaches Alex and John. I'm John. Today, we're going to cover Alteryx Weekly Challenge number 230. Take a look, it's in a book. Let's get started. Alright, so in this week's challenge, our goal is to take this New York Times bestseller data from the years 2011 through 2018 and create a couple of different reports. For one, we want to create a bar chart that shows the top 10 best-selling authors based on the number of weeks on the list, and then secondarily, to show the number of books that that author had on the list. But the top 10 is sorted according to these bars, which is the sum number of weeks on the bestseller list. And then we want to make a table down here that shows, for each year, the book that was on the top seller list for the longest. And you can see also over here we've got a header and a footer. So I'm just going to move this output out of the way. So our inputs over here. We've got a publisher, the link, the date. I assume that this review was published, or maybe when the book was published. It doesn't really matter. We have author. You can see that the author starts with the word by. So we'll have to get rid of that. Then we have the title and then the number of weeks on the list. So the first thing that I want to do, I'm just going to grab a select tool and let's just see what the data fields are. And you can see right away our weeks on list. Well, we're going to have to sum that value, but it's coming to us as a string. So let's just go ahead and change that to an integer. And like I just mentioned, we have our author count, or our author field, and it has the word by in there. So let's just go ahead and drag a formula tool. And let's update the author field, and we'll just do a replace of the author field where the target is by with a space. Make sure you put a space in there. And we're going to replace that with nothing. And furthermore, I'm just going to throw a trim around everything just to make sure that we don't have any leading or trailing white space. So let's just scroll through this and see what we've got, just to make sure that there's no unexpected weirdness in here. Just scroll a few lines down. All right, look at this. I'm glad we scrolled because otherwise I would not have expected that. James Patterson and Michael Ledwidge, Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. So it looks like some of these authors, or some of these records in the author column, list co-authors. And in fact, if we had actually read this description, it says, blah, 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 along with the number of books they had on the list, and in parentheses, when a book has more than one author, count each author separately. So we're going to have to separate that. And so what I think, we could probably write a regex to split by the word and, but I'm a little worried that, and is a pretty common string, the letters A and D in that order. It's fairly common. And what I'm worried about is if we do a regex and tokenize, you see right here, William Landay has an A and D in there. And if we split by A and D, we might split things like that up. So what I'm going to do is let's go back to this formula tool. We're going to update author again, and we're going to do another replace of the author field, where this time the target is space, A and D space, and we're going to place that with, let's replace it with a comma. So we should be pretty safe because we're saying and separated by space on either side. I don't think we're going to have to worry about replacing anything that we don't want to with a comma. But what that's going to let us do is we can now use text to columns, delimiter as a column, column to split is author, and we'll split to rows because, maybe there's a book that has 3 authors. I don't know. Plus, that'll actually help us with our counting in a moment here. Okay, so I think we'll be all right now. Let's just find, you see now we see her, or now you see her, as James Patterson and Michael Ledwidge on separate lines. So let's go ahead and now drag on a summarize tool. And we'll do the summarization for the bar chart. So that's going to be, we want to group by author. We want to sum weeks on list. And we also want to get the distinct count of books that that author had. So we'll click on title and do count distinct. Let's go ahead and run that real quick, see what we get. I'm just going to sort some the weeks on list in descending order. And we see Patterson at 195, David Baldacci at 121. Let's just check that. Yep, 195 and 121. So I think we're good there. Oh, and Patterson has 41 books. David has 13 books. Let's just double check those. Yep, 41 and 13. So I think we're good. So now we can go ahead. Let's grab a sort tool. We will sort in descending order by the sum weeks on list. And you can see that'll put James Patterson on the top with his 195. We don't want to sort by distinct title. That's just going to come through as whatever it is. So you can see like James Patterson, he's had 41 books. Man, that guy writes a lot of books. But they've only been on the list for a combined 195 weeks. You know, that's an average of like 5 books. There are 5 weeks per book. Whereas here, E.L. James, the author of our 50 Shades of Grey series, only had 2 books, but those 2 books combined for 85 weeks. Or, I don't know what this guy wrote, but his one book was on there for 81 weeks. So now let's go ahead and grab a sample tool. And we're going to group by, or we don't need to group by author, I'm sorry. We just want to grab the first 10 records there. Alright, so now we've gotten our top 10 best-selling authors. We'll go to the reporting tool palette, grab an interactive chart tool. And we'll go ahead and configure the chart to match the output. So add a layer. This one will be, I don't remember the names. Let's say weeks on list. This will be a bar chart. The x-axis is author. The y-axis is sum weeks on list. Then we want to add a second layer. This will be books on list. And those were dots, so we'll make this a scatter plot. X, again, will be author. Y, this one will be count distinct title. You can see that looks pretty familiar. Let's go down to the layer in the styles. The color on this was like a teal green, so that's good enough, I think. And then the scatter plot for books on list was like some purpley color, I think. That should be good enough there. Chart, let's squish it down to 500 pixels. On the axes, the x-axis was author, capitalized. There was no title on the y-axis, so we'll get rid of that. I think that's all we had to do here. Oh, and the chart title itself was... what was the chart title? It's like top 10. I think this was what the title was. Alright, so if we X out of that and run, our bar chart should now match pretty well with the output bar chart. So we got that, and let's see, just to make sure that we didn't miss anything there. I think that looks pretty good. You see the legend is actually inside the chart. Let's see how we can move the legend inside the chart rather than being out there on the outside. Should just be able to drag it right on like that. Now the interactive chart tool is certainly not perfect, but it's pretty nice. It's a step in the right direction for sure. Alright, I think that looks good. So now let's go ahead and look at the top book per year. So let's go back here before we split any of the data. Oh, and one more thing. You see on our date, we don't have a year column. So in our formula tool, let's go ahead and make a year column as well. And since this data is between 2011 and 2018, I'm just going to be a little cheat here. I'm just going to do 20 plus the right of our date field right 2 digits. And you see, there we go, we have our date. And just so we get the order right, or the sorting right, let's make that a 2 number, and we'll set that as an integer. So now I'm going to go ahead and grab another summarize tool. It might not actually be necessary to summarize here, but you know, it doesn't hurt. So we're going to group by year. Well, let's group by title, and we will sum weeks on list. And let's just go ahead and sort. Again, we want to sort by year in ascending order, and sum weeks on list in descending order. In this case, we're going to grab another sample tool. We're going to sample the first n rows while grouping by the year. And if we do that, let it run. We got the confession, the help, dragon tattoo, best of me, longest ride, 11/22/63, girl on the train, milk and honey. And let's just eyeball it, see if everything looks good. I think we're good there. So let's go ahead. I'm going to do one more thing because I've just done this enough now that I know that that year being an integer, the report table is going to put a comma in there. So let's just go ahead and make this a string. That way there will be no commas in there and we will be good to go when I drag this report table onto the canvas. I shouldn't need to do anything there. Oh, let's rename things. This will be title and with proper capitalization, and this will be weeks on list. Let's grab a browse just to make sure everything looks good there. So at this point, we're pretty much done. We just have to put the finishing touches on everything. Oh, let's center all of our fields. And why isn't title uppercase? I don't know. Let's go here, and if we click on all these columns, we can go in and center the alignment on each one of them. And so the way that you combine different reporting snippets, for lack of a better word, is with the union tool. So I'm going to drag a union tool up here. And so we have our interactive chart as number 1 and the basic table as number 2. And the order in which you put things in union can actually be important. I mean, of course, you can move things around, but it's nice to have things in the proper order from the get-go. So we're going to grab a layout tool here. And you can see up here we have chart on top and then table. And of course, had we put table in the union first, it would have looked like this, and then we would just put the chart on top of the table. And you can see when we run it, we've got, just like that, we have our chart and our table on top of each other. And just to wrap it up nice and neat, over here you see we have recommendation. So header is reading recommendations, and the footer says, based on New York Times bestsellers list 2011 through 2018. I'm going to copy and paste that one. So let's grab a report header, just drop it onto the workflow right here. So the report header will read reading recommendations. We'll get rid of a date. We'll get rid of the image logo. We can now grab a report footer. We'll get rid of the copyright text, and we're just going to copy and paste the footer there, get rid of page numbers. Let's run it and see what we get. Right. And it's not the best output. I mean, if I was going to do this properly, I would put a render tool, I would make sure everything looks good, but everything looks like it matches the final output. So there's my solution to Alteryx Weekly Challenge number 230. This was a pretty good one. You know, not overly challenging, but we had to do some thinking. We had to split data in order to, or use a formula to help us split our data into rows, do some summarization, and of course, practicing the reporting tools is always good. But there you have it. There's my solution. Thanks for watching. As always, thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the Data Coach channel for more awesome lessons on Alteryx and all things data analytics and visualization. Follow Data Coach on Twitter at AskTessellation and follow me personally at jemery_dataviz. Thanks again.